and welcome to Introducing Me. I'm your host, Sarah. I started this podcast to get to know other people and lifestyles while discovering more about myself. Each episode, I will give a new guest a chance to discuss their background, culture, interests, or whatever they want to talk about to help increase all of our own worldviews. Today, I would like to introduce you to Michael Dixon, who is here to talk about his life and just wherever the conversation goes. Michael Dixon is the Chief Inclusion and Diversity Officer at Susquehanna University, which is how I know him, and I'm really grateful that he is here today to share some stories with us. So, Michael, why don't you go on and say hello?
Hi, Sarah, and everybody else who's listening in this podcast universe. I'm very happy to be a guest on your show. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Yes, you're welcome. So why don't we start, since I gave your title and what you do, how you got into your job?
Cool. Do you want the short version or the long version?
We have plenty of time, so how about the long version?
Goodness. All right. So I guess we could take it back to when I was a college student. When I got into college initially, this was late 1990s, I thought I was going to be a statistics and math teacher in the high school. I got a scholarship to go to college. I was all set. That was going to be my career path and vocation. First semester, I failed a class. Got back on track after the second semester, and then semester 3, 4, 5, 6, failed a class every single semester, to the point where I was academically suspended from the institution, which meant that I needed to make a certain grade point average in order to get back into school. And once I did that over the summer, I did a hard look into what it is that I was really passionate about. And what I realized about my life is that I was passionate about being in the college environment and connecting people to resources. And in this undercurrent of that work was my love for diversity, and then what I later learned, equity and inclusion and critical race studies or theory. So I ended up creating my own degree in philosophy and race at North Carolina State University. And I graduated after 5 years because, you fail a number of classes, they tend to hold you back a little bit. So after I graduated, I figured if I want to work in student affairs and in higher education, I need to get my feet wet in that. Graduating with a number of F's on your transcript, you have a low GPA, and not many schools are accepting people with low GPAs. So I figured if I worked for a couple of years, I could be seen more as a person who has potential. So I worked for a year at a small college in North Carolina, at Guilford College. That gave you my start. I worked part-time and spent a lot of that time really researching what programs were out there that would be interesting. Sparing you the long story, I ended up enrolling at Grand Valley State University, where I graduated with a degree in college student affairs leadership. And then from that point on, every single position that I had a theme of diversity embedded in it. First job, admissions and multicultural recruiter. Next job was the coordinator of intercultural life and leadership programs. And then director of multicultural affairs, which then turned into director of intercultural services with an emphasis on multicultural affairs and international student support. All of those positions essentially led me to the role that I'm in now. And coincidentally, and we may get into this later, but all of those positions were at small private liberal arts institutions. So while I may have been educated at the large public schools, all of my professional experience has been at the small private schools. And I've enjoyed being in this environment because I think it provides people the opportunity to get to learn each other. And this kind of relationship would not have happened, I don't believe, if I was at a large public school.
So what is it like, what do you do on a day-to-day? And it doesn't have to necessarily be this job that you're currently in or any of these jobs that have been with that diversity focus.
So diversity to me cuts across all walks of life. No different than I feel like liberal arts cuts across all walks of life. You just learn, lifelong learning is one of the pillars of liberal education. And then just learning for learning's sake is all part of that as well. So my role each day is to educate myself on something that I didn't know going into the day. So I'm curating things from LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter, learning about how other people across the nation and across the world are looking at diversity issues. What are people passionate about? What are they trying to raise awareness about? Those are things that I need to educate myself about so I connect people to resources, which is what I mentioned earlier. The other thing is that, I have a set of beliefs that's based on my own worldview and where I've come up, where I've grown up at, all the places that I've lived at, but my family, and we'll probably get into that a little later. All of that makes me who I am today. So I need to check all of that based on what I'm reading and what I'm interacting with. Does that support how I'm feeling? Is this a new topic that I don't really have a thought on? And I need to start forming some opinions on those things.
Do you have a specialty, a specific focus that you're most passionate about?
Yeah. So what I did not mention is that I'm working on a PhD right now in educational administration and leadership at Indiana State University. And when I originally started that work, I thought I was going to write about presidents and their diversity self-awareness because I feel like a lot of the faux pas that happen at large public, small privates, and all in between of presidents saying really dumb things is because they just don't have that diversity self-awareness or intercultural competence to, one, know the right things to say, but then two, to say the right things for the moral imperative. So that's what I started with. Then I've now switched my topic after 2.5 years of work, which I'm a little disappointed in the fact that I was not able to make that work, but things happen for a reason. What I did not discuss, I am the product of a biracial household. My dad's from Jamaica, mother's from the Philippines. And so growing up, I was never black enough for the black kids and not white enough for the white kids. And I sat in this third space where I had to negotiate my racial identity with the way that people treat me vis-a-vis the way I look at myself. So what I'm focusing on right now for my dissertation is black multiracial people who work in student affairs and how they navigate higher education during periods of racial distress.
That's a very specific topic, but also sounds like one that can definitely be heard and would be helpful for also those college presidents that you were originally looking into with their opinions and viewpoints.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting because, like, as somebody told me, sometimes people work on dissertations that are more autobiographical, where you tend to find things that are more aligned with you and your identities. So I spent, like I said, before working this job here at Susquehanna, spent the last 15 years working in student affairs. So the work that I'm doing now for my dissertation seems more in line with who I was before I came here. And therefore, I will more likely be really heavily involved and really interested in that work versus the work I was doing previously, which I was interested in, but I don't think to the same level or degree that I am with the topic that I have right now.
Right, that makes sense. It's more of a personal connection, and will also at the student affair level help even more with the students, and your whole thought about continued learning and having continued growth amongst a lot of people will really help with that.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned both of your parents being immigrants. So can you take us through what it was like growing up with them?
Yeah. So when you have two parents who did not grow up in the U.S., some of the things that we take for granted in U.S. American culture, those are things that my parents had to learn and then transmit to us. And by us, I mean my sister and I. I'm a year and a month older than my sister. And the two of us trying to negotiate our identities in the various places that we lived is just, at some points was easy and other points was not as easy. When you live near a military base, you tend to hang around individuals who are probably more open to diversity because of the different people that they interact with, whether they go and get stationed abroad or that they have racial mixing in their own families. So a lot of the friends that I had growing up in the various places that we lived were racially mixed as well, whether they were black and Asian or white and Asian or white and Hispanic, or it was just all kinds of different mixtures of folks. My parents listened to a lot of music, so where if I talk to some people who live more monoracialized lives, they tend to listen to music that is stereotypically associated with their race and or the culture in which they grew up in. So if you live in a more rural area, you might listen to more country music. If you live in a more urban setting, you might listen to like urban contemporary or pop music. Not saying that others don't do that, but living with parents who were only really educated musically by pop music, that's the things that we listen to in our household. So when I think about the music that we listened to growing up, I think about the 80s and Madonna and Boy George, Duran Duran. And then, going back to the 70s, disco music was really big in the house, a lot of dance music. Early 90s is when I got into hip hop and rap and R&B. And then 2000s, late 90s, 2000s, you got like techno and trance and all of those things. All of my parents introduced me to all of that. And music, as I just mentioned now, is a big part of my life. But when I think about my parents and the things that they've instilled in me, all related to music and how that can brighten up not just party, but brighten up your soul and make you feel better about yourself.
Yeah, music definitely brings that connection through a lot of people. Were there other things that were culturally relevant for your parents that were brought up in your household?
It's interesting because both of my parents, like I mentioned, come from different places in the world. So they had to negotiate their own understanding of each other and then taking all of that and then bringing it here to the US where now there's a third understanding of how to live life. So education, very important. Neither one of them graduated from college. I believe my dad took a year in college. Mom graduated from high school, no college education. So for them, education is very important. You do well in school because that is going to be your ticket to a better life. And they were very true because I would not be here today if it wasn't for their pushing me to do all the things that I did in high school, which got me into college. And, I had some setbacks in college, as I mentioned before, but then going to get my master's. I was the first person to graduate with a bachelor's, first person to enroll in a master's and graduate, first person to enroll in a PhD program with the idea that I will graduate next year in 2021. And, to be able to accomplish all the things that I've been able to accomplish and move socioeconomically to where I'm at now. I mean, growing up, it was hand-me-down sweaters and not new shoes every year. And I was one of the kids that didn't want to bring up the fact that, no, I didn't have new clothes for the new year, or that I might get one gift for Christmas because family couldn't afford Christmas gifts. I think I've taken it to the extreme now where I have a lot of things and I'm trying to pare it all down now because I don't need 28 pairs of shoes because I didn't have shoes growing up. That's just, associated trauma with all of that. So I just need to dial it back and think about, what's important in my life and those life lessons that my parents try to instill in us that I try to take with me today.
Yeah, definitely. Now, are you able to bring in the culture that you had growing up and some of those lessons with your family now? Are you still listening to that same music with your kids, or what's changed?
I don't know that necessarily things have changed. The music things, I find that my kids, the family, are interested in music. I don't know necessarily to the same level that I'm at, but they're also, I'll see what happens when my oldest is 12 and 13, when he can really understand it. Currently, he's 7. So Michael, the third, he's 7, and I have Quincy, he's 4. When we play music on the TV, they are super interested in it. They're dancing around. They're trying to mimic it. They pick up songs so quickly, the words to them. So musically, I feel like they're going to do something with that, whether they play an instrument or sing. My partner, she grew up sort of in a musical household. She didn't mention how much music had a role in her life, but she did play in the band, and I was a singer when I was in college, in high school and college. So I have no doubt that both of our sons are going to have some musical talent, whether it's singing or playing an instrument. So that's the one thing I know that I bring to the household now. The other things that I like to bring to the household, games, playing games, whether they're board games, card games, video games, competition, spirit of competition, but not competition for competition's sake. Like not trying to beat somebody just because you want to beat them. Like I enjoy spending time with people, and I feel like playing a game gives you an opportunity to get to know other people, what they're passionate about. How do they show compassion in games? Do they only want to win because that's the only thing that's important to them, or do they care about how people are interacting? And that's something that I've learned more over the last couple of years than I did when I was first doing that as a child.
Yeah, and those are good things to instill at such a young age. Now, you referred to your partner as your partner. Do you want to explain why that is the word that you specifically use?
Yes. So we are not married. We have not been married. We're in a long-term relationship. Allie is a female. I'm a male. So sometimes I think when people use the word partner, they assume same-sex relationship. So I'm here to dispel the myth. I'm not in a same-sex relationship. But my partner and I, we're not married, but we are in a long-term committed relationship to each other. So then some people will say, well, then why not get married? Like that's just not where we are right now. But we know that we're committed to each other. We're committed to the life that we have raised together with our two kids. Actually, next week is our 9-year anniversary of being together. And so when I think about that 9 years and all the stuff that we've learned about each other, about ourselves individually, about our kids and our lives, it's just a whole breadth and depth of stuff to talk about. Some things that I think that people who have gotten married and later divorced in like 2 or 3 years, this is what they're looking for when they're thinking about marriage. You stick in it through thick and thin, and there are low points in relationships, but there are also high points in the relationship. And when I think about it in its totality, I wouldn't trade this for the world. Like I love her very dearly, and I love our family. I love what we've been able to create together. And I'm not looking to change that, with anything else.
Yeah, well, congratulations on the practically 9 years. By the time this is out, it'll probably have passed and it'll be 9 years. So, congratulations. Have you ever had any, and this might be a bit too personal, have you ever had any like real difficulties in a situation because you aren't married, like not with each other, but externally?
Yeah, people refer to us. So your husband. I saw your husband at the store the other day. Do we correct them? Do we not say anything? Oh, I saw your wife. She was picking up coffee at the Kind Cafe. She's not my wife. Do I correct them? Do I not correct them? Trying to it's no different than the diversity conversation that sometimes people will have. Like when they say something that you know is ignorant, do you confront that right then and there? Do you let it slide? Do you have a relationship with them? There are all kinds of questions that go into that. Do I have a relationship with them? Are they going to hear what I have to say? If they hear what I have to say, do I have enough time to express how I fully feel about that situation? Maybe I don't. So I'm just not going to confront that. I'll just let it slide. And then if we get into another situation, maybe I might address it there. So when I think about that piece, that's one that I know we've had issues with. The other piece is that because when you're not married, you can't have each other on insurance unless your employer has those type of benefits available. Currently, Susquehanna University does not have that available unless you are married or in a civil union. That's something recognized by the state. But that's something in my role that I'm looking to address and hopefully get changed.
Yeah, I know not at Susquehanna, but at another institution, they had that sort of policy, and then they were kind of saying, well, why do we still have this policy? Because they had the policy before same sex marriage became legal. And then like obviously that changed, and so then it was kind of like a re-look at the policy. I have no idea what, if any, history there is with Susquehanna and that sort of policy. But it's definitely a good one in like situations like yours where like I literally had the conversation with my boyfriend of, if you lose your job, you lose your insurance. I can't put you on my insurance even though we live together. How much does it cost to get a marriage license, even though like I have no desire to get married right now, which is
Right.
a horrible thing to even be thinking.
Well, I mean, people have done that. If you're thinking it, and I've thought about it, how many other people in this, society we live in have thought about getting married because society says in order for you to qualify for it, you have to be married. Like it's not, but it's not outside the realm of possibility that people have done it only for the insurance.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I happen to know from personal experience that when you introduce yourself to someone new, you say, I actually don't know how you say it, but you say something along the lines of, I'm Michael Dixon, he slash him. I just don't know if you say the slash or not.
Mm,
So do you want to explain why you introduce yourself like that?
sure. So what I've discovered, and I can take this back, I have interacted with people from the LGBTQ community as far back as I can remember, going back to I think it's high school. I don't recall anybody in middle school that displayed any outward, that was out or outward appearances or anything of that sort. But I knew in high school there were a number of LGBTQ individuals in my high school class. So it was always kind of in there in terms of how do I respect that community, even though I'm not part of that community. And then 2006, right around this time period, my best friend from college, his name is Peter, decided to come out to me after spending some time with him. He went to UNC Chapel Hill, and I went to NC State. So took a trip from NC State down Tobacco Road to Chapel Hill, spent some time with him in his residence hall room. And he was working at the time as a community director. And we had some drinks. And at that point, he decided to share with me that he was part of the LGBTQ community. I'm like, how come you didn't share this before? So, well, I didn't share that because some people don't take that news well. And some people have lost friendships because they decided to tell people how they are inside, truly who they are inside. It's like, well, Peter, for me to not accept you for who you are, one, says something about our long-term friendship up to this point. And then two, like I've been working in diversity, equity, inclusion, and although I'm really new on my path, like it would be hypocritical for me to have issues with you because you're part of the LGBTQ community, knowing that I work in diversity, equity, and inclusion. I wasn't so poetic at that point in time, but you kind of get the drift. So since that point in time, so since 2006, I've tried to educate myself about the community and certain language that people would use, like being in the family. That's code word for being in the LGBTQ plus family, and using proper pronouns because people get misgendered. Some people have made transitions, some people have not. Some people choose to adopt a more feminine or masculine form of whatever gender identity. And to me, using the pronouns is important because it signifies one, that I understand the importance of not being misgendered, and two, that I am an ally in this space. Now, I don't go around saying, hey, I'm an ally in this space, but they hopefully can figure out by my actions and my words that I do care about the causes in the community, and that if there's an injustice here, there's an injustice. And I need to be as well fighting for that injustice as for other causes.
It's truly great that this came from like a personal experience of yours when you were younger and that you've held this for so long. I was not expecting for you to say, "Oh, I've been doing this for over a decade." Because I feel like the LGBTQ specifically with pronouns has been a lot bigger and more emphasized in the past couple of years. So,
Well, I'll say that I started introducing myself probably with those pronouns 2014, 2015.
okay.
So I'm a part of the American College Personnel Association, or ACPA, which is one of two premier eminent student affairs national bodies. In ACPA, it tends to be more socially justice minded. You could read through some of the things that they're focused on, particularly the strategic initiative, the strategic imperative on racial justice and decolonization. So when I think about that and compared to another group that shall remain nameless, that does not have that focus, I'm really glad that I chose ACPA as my student affairs home, because the knowledge and understanding that I've gained on a variety of issues, particularly this one, has provided me leaps and bounds over where I might have been if I did not have this direct contact with individuals who feel very strongly about these topics and these issues to educate me, and then, of course, then advocate. I can advocate on that behalf.
Cool. It sounds like the organization is really good and definitely has the right sort of values. So I'm glad to hear that that exists for student affair employees and to help our students. Now I'm going to take a bit of a left turn here and kind of go back because you've mentioned a lot of different places in terms of like where you were when you were in college. You're now in rural Pennsylvania. I believe you've been in a couple other places. So what have your experiences been like moving around?
Man, for those of you who have ever been a part of the military, you know that PCS means, I don't know what those letters actually mean, but I know that meant you got 3 years tops, 3 years tops in a place, and you're off to the next place. So it is of the utmost that you don't get attached to a place very quickly, or sorry, you don't get attached to a place and you learn to make friends very quickly. So as we continue to move around, I was born in Jacksonville, Florida, on a naval base. We moved from there, I think I was 2 or 3, to California. Spent 2 or 3 years there. I think I was 5, almost 6. Moved to the Philippines. Spent 3 years there. We had to move from the Philippines. We were gone anyways because of our order. Well, my dad's orders to move somewhere else. But the volcano was going to erupt. This was 1989. The volcano did erupt and covered the military base, so they had to clean that all up, and they opened the base again for the local military to use. So then from the Philippines, moved to North Carolina, spent 15 years in North Carolina, moved to Michigan, spent 2 years there, a year in Illinois, 3 years in Iowa, 8 years in Indiana, and then now, coming up on a year in Pennsylvania. There's a lot of beauty in a lot of different places. So, in addition to different states who all have different cultures within themselves, and I'm using culture as a little c, like Michigan culture, Indiana culture. You got the rural nature of the places that I've lived in, but I also lived in larger cities like Grand Rapids, Michigan, or Davenport, Iowa. Living here in rural Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania feels very similar to North Manchester, Indiana, where on paper looks very similar. 6,000 residents-ish, about 96% white, tends to vote red in the elections. A lot of blue collar and lower income individuals that live in the area. One thing you learn about yourself when people say, well, I could never live there, is that, well, why can't you live there? What are you looking for that your current environment doesn't provide, that you have to live, let's say, in a larger, more urban area? Some people say, well, we want access to resources. Okay, well, then what specific resources are you looking for? Well, cultural things. Like what? Like museums and things. So you're going to be going to museums that often? Like, I don't go to museums that often. So to me, that's not important. What's important to me, having various places to eat, having access to friends, and things for the kids to do. If we can find that, which we have found a number of things to do here in Selinsgrove, like, to me, it doesn't matter living near the urban place. And as a matter of fact, with the current pandemic going on, I'm actually glad we don't live near a more urban place that's more popularly dense, because COVID will spread much more rapidly in those areas than it does here in rural Snyder County.
Yeah. So obviously, like you gave the statistics, Snyder County, rural Pennsylvania is a very white area. So have you had any issues here or in any of these other rural places that you've lived with your race?
I haven't had any issues here yet, but that's not to say, that it may not happen. I'm not saying I'm looking for them, but I'm not going to be ignorant to that fact. Pause. You know what? Something happened recently, and I do remember, but let me go back. So when I lived in North Manchester, Indiana, I remember there was a Confederate limo that used to drive through town. It would have the Confederate flag on the front and on the side, and on the back in the trunk, it would have a plastic arm of what seemingly is a black person's arm hanging out, like closed in. And they would drive through town. It wouldn't say anything. You wouldn't talk to anybody, but it would just drive through town. And I like, why? What point are you trying to prove here? Like, you're associating a number of different things together. And so that's a piece that it bothers me. Indiana, when some people say that the Confederate flag doesn't indicate racism or that it's heritage and not hate, I say, it's interesting. Do you confront the people who use those symbols in conjunction with hateful activity or rhetoric? And if you don't, then you're just as complacent and complicit with their actions as those people who are doing that outward stuff. Fast forward. So recently, I went to go pick up uh, Michael from the elementary school. And before I could get the phone call in, because as soon as you go to the door, because he's in an after school program, before he could get to the door, a woman comes out. It's a white lady. She brings this little black child out. It's a little black girl. Says, "Here's your dad." I was like, okay, one, I didn't call. I had not called yet to say I'm here. Two, how do you know that this child is mine? Three, I feel like the only assumption that I can make is that you saw I don't even know how they saw me. You saw a black guy or a darker skinned brown person outside. You assume that this little black child was mine. When the child looked at you and said, "That's not my dad," your immediate response was, "Oh, okay, well, go back inside. I think that's Michael's dad." So it wasn't the one black child. It must be the other black child's parent standing out here with no apology. So that's situation number one. Okay. Situation two, faculty member at said institution gets me confused with another staff member who I'm not going to, we don't look alike. Our skin tones are different. The thing that we have in common is that we're both considered black. Was adamant that I was that other person. Kept saying that person's name over and over again, and when I didn't respond, was getting visibly upset. When I address that person and say, "I'm not who you think I am," instead of saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, you know, you have similar hair," or, "your build is similar," something, anything along those lines, not even excuse the behavior. Your immediate response is, "Well, then who are you?" So then I tell you who I am. "Wait, so do you work at the school?" "Well, yeah, because we've actually talked in a couple of different situations." So you didn't recognize who I was. You thought I was somebody else. Instead of apologizing, you're trying to find out who I am. Like, that in its totality, some people will say, "Well, then what's the problem with that?" Well, there's always been the excuse that black people look alike. Uh, there's the excuse that, well, just because I made a mistake doesn't make me a racist. And then what could have smoothed over the situation, just in common decency, would just be an apology. And didn't get that either. Even after, I mean, that happened 2 weeks ago. And still nothing to this day. Like it was just nothing that happened. And what's a big deal? So, things have happened. Are they in the grand scheme of things? Are people burning crosses on my lawn or throwing bricks through my window? No. But it's still things that bother me, and I know it's race related.
Right.
Long-winded, sorry.
No, that's perfectly okay. And I mean the fact that like when I first asked the question, like it kind of took a little bit before you were like, wait, I do have situations. I think that also speaks to like how you're reacting to them. And obviously I cannot apologize for either of those people, but like I'm here being like, oh my God, they should have just apologized. Like why like apologies go a long way. And like I know I can be awful with names, and especially with people wearing masks, I'm like, you're lucky if I know who you are, because I pass people and like I wear a hat around campus, so I'm like nobody's gonna know who I am, and I'm like that is okay. But you say anyone says hi to me, my brain is like it's gonna take a minute before I get their name, and then the moment's gonna have passed, and well, I just said hello. They didn't get a name.
Right. Right. And that would have been fine. But don't be so I think the thing that was, again, that was so bothersome to me was that you were so adamant that I was that person. Again, I couldn't have been anybody else. And then when I wasn't that person, it didn't compute for you.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the fact that you did share those stories, even though they're not, light and cheery and, wonderful instances.
It is what it is. Like I've learned to have thicker skin with regards to these things. It doesn't excuse the behavior, and I know that we have a long way to go, but I want people to understand that things happen. Things happen in people's lives, and some people, because of generational trauma, may choose to not ever tell anybody that happens, or they only choose to tell a select few people because they think that they'll get it, meaning that it may have also happened to you, and so you understand what it is that I'm going through for more empathy, not sympathy.
Okay. Yeah, that I can see where people would have those different reactions. Do you have a good outlet that you are able to have these discussions with people?
Yeah, there's a group of individuals that I think get what I'm going through. So, I talk with them on occasion as to like what's going on.
So, one of the things that I mentioned in my very first episode, and part of the reason I started this podcast, is because I took the IDI. So, would you be able to kind of share what that is and what your work is involved with in the IDI?
Sure. So the IDI, which is the Intercultural Development Inventory, is a 50-item survey that was created by Dr. Hammer, who based his work on Dr. Bennett. Yes, Dr. Bennett from the 1980s, who basically theorized that people are on this continuum with regards to the work that they're doing interculturally. So you start from denying differences all the way up to I can seamlessly move in and out of cultures appropriately. And we're all on this continuum in some way, shape, or form. Some people move along this continuum faster than others, but it all depends on how much work you're putting in to doing this. I've done the work. I've done diversity, equity, and inclusion work for 15, 16 years, and it's something that you think that you're further along. Your perception is that you've done more, and the instrument that's been tested by a number of different people will say otherwise. And so, what do you do with that information? Do you just say, "Well," do you just give up, or do you say, "You know what? I still have work to do, and so I just need to get on it to figure out how can I do better in these situations." So that's the IDI in a nutshell.
Cool. Well, thank you for that much more detailed description. Are there any other resources that you think people should have in their wheelhouse for understanding diversity, equity, inclusion, and all of that?
Oh, goodness, there's nothing I think this work is like drinking from a fire hose. There's just all kinds of stuff out there right now. There's flavor of the month things. There's whatever you're interested in studying. I mean, those are things that I'm asking people to really take a look at with regards to this work, because you can never stop learning. The things that you learn now may not be applicable in 2 years, 5 years, but you know that if you know how to find information, then you can always stay up to date on what's going on in these particular areas. Some of the things that I've asked people to look at are just general common decency things. How do you approach things with cultural humility? Which means that when I approach a situation that I don't know, I'm not going in thinking that they're like me and they are going to do the same things that I'm passionate about or that go on in my culture. I need to understand what their culture means to them and the things that are important to them in that culture. And those are the things I need to be very mindful of as I interact with them. So it's hard to say, like, you need to have this book. There are a lot of books that I have on my shelf, over here behind me that I have read or perused or had for a class. And they've all led me into, where I'm at today. So I guess the bottom line is pick up something and read it, and then pick up something else and read that. And if those two things are conflicting, that's where you need to start your discovery. Why are these things conflicting? What is it about that person's life that makes them right from this particular vantage point and this other book or this other resource from that vantage point? And as you continue to do that, interacting with other people who are also on a journey helps you sharpen your skills. That's what I can give.
That's some great advice. I really appreciate it. Now, before I wrap up and do my closing statements, I'm going to ask you a really random, it's not actually that random, I will be totally honest about that, because it's kind of related to what we were talking about, but a more fun question. And that would be, what is your favorite thing to do outside of the house with your children?
Oh, with the children.
I mean, or not with the children. If maybe you're like a go to the wineries kind of person, you can answer that too. I just thought, children are fun.
No, children are fun. So it's two things. And I think it's because of my love for that I hope that they develop a love for it also. So from a selfish standpoint, that's why I do it. So I either take them to places like Hoopla's Extreme, or Dave and Buster's, so they can just have fun with video games for a period of time, 1 to 2 hours. Or I take them with me to go play disc golf.
Okay.
So when we go play disc golf, Michael would at least pick up the disc and he'll start to throw it. The nice thing that I've learned recently about disc golf is that aside from being outdoors, with COVID, things on the inside, just can't spend too much time too close to each other. But when you're outdoors, you're getting exercise, you're walking, you're doing physical activity, you're competing. The other thing is that there was a story recently about how disc golf has brought together this father-son, where the son has an extreme form of autism. And I'm not saying that Michael has an extreme form, but I think he has autistic tendencies at times. So to be able to have him focus on this for a period of time, because he's so excited about taking his disc and throwing it, and it had to be a certain color, and he loves the sound of the disc actually hitting the chains and falling in the basket. So for us, like, that's what I like to do with them, because it gives us an opportunity to kind of walk and talk and interact with each other and do things that's not sitting in front of a screen, like playing a video game or them on their iPads.
Yeah, well, that's a great story to end on. Very cute and adorable. So that is all that we've got for the podcast today. We've got information in the description on where you can find the podcast. We're on Instagram, Facebook. And if you have any follow-up questions or want to guest on the podcast, you are more than welcome to email me at introducingmepodcast@gmail.com. The podcast is also on Patreon if you would like to support the Patreon. There are various different tiers starting at $1 a month. And thank you to Michael for spending time with me today, to sharing all of your great stories. It was really great to hear so many different things, and I'm very appreciative. And thank you to my listeners for taking the time out of your day to hear a new story. Until next week, bye.
Thank you, Sarah.